Confession Sessions Backyard Chats. I'm your host, Modesta Tonin. Our first guest today is Fallon Farinacci. Fallon is an Indigenous rights advocate who plans on making a big impact in Canada. Hi Fallon, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Nice to have you here on our show.
Thank you for having me.
You've been on our stage before.
Yes.
And you've shared a very traumatic experience. How has that experience led you down this road of advocacy for Indigenous missing women?
So I actually came upon this role that I've been playing now for a couple years. My cousin, she works in Toronto at the Native Friendship Center, and she was actually the one who had told me that my mother's name was on a list that had other Indigenous women who had gone missing or murdered. My mother is not Indigenous, but the link was my father. And so from that, she said, I'm not sure if you want to reach out. They're doing hearings and you could testify for the National Inquiry for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. This was back in 2017. And from that, I testified. And then about a year and a half later, I was contacted by one of the commissioners, and they asked if I would join the National Family Advisory Circle. So even when I started that journey and joined other families who had family members who were missing or murdered, I still wasn't even really aware of what my role was going to be. And so just throughout joining that NFACT, that was last year, and then from there I actually was called upon to do another advisory committee as well, which again had to do with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And then since then I've done a couple more. And honestly, it didn't dawn on me until the closing ceremonies. They were last year in June. And I realized then that I felt like an imposter for so long, because I just wasn't quite understanding of what my role was with it, because it was predominantly around missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls and two-spirited peoples, but I still I wasn't quite sure, because it was my father who was Métis. And then I realized it was at the closing ceremonies, after I had been sitting on this board, after I had actually sat on another board for missing and murdered Indigenous women for the government of Canada, and then like being a part of NFACT, and even through my hearing, I didn't realize it was me. I was the girl. I was the child. It was all the effects that had happened to me because of the lack of justice. And so, I've just grown so much. And going forward, I know I don't even know nearly enough, but from what I've learned in the last year alone, I don't want to say I'm excited. That's not the right word, but I am happy to grow and know that I'm only going to keep growing from there and continuously learn. I'm not perfect. I don't know everything about Indigenous rights or anything compared to, overall what has happened to Indigenous people in Canada. However, I'm learning.
So through learning, you were learning a little bit about your history.
Yeah.
And because you were so young when you went through such a traumatic experience, do you feel that by learning all this and by standing up and saying that things have to change, do you think you found your purpose?
100%. Yeah. I think I had struggled so much my life. Like I've seen life and so short, and at such young ages,
so much,
that I've just thought there just has to be more. Like that have to be. And not only that, like, why am I here still? After losing my mother, my father, and then my brother, why am I here? And I want it to be with purpose. I want to live my life on purpose.
What do you want to see? What would be your moment to say that I was a part of that and I feel that that's the change that I wanted to see through all these years? Like, what would be the main thing that you would want to see happening?
When we handed over the report, I felt it. I felt change, right? Because wow, I was a part of something so monumental, but I didn't realize it while I was doing the work.
Yeah.
Until I heard other family stories and I walked alongside other family members and I saw their pain. It wasn't even what I had went through. So I felt,
You understood it too.
Yeah. And then I was quick to be like, okay, what's the next thing? And then I realized even right after the closing ceremonies, it was like, no, now the next thing is like seeing the calls to justice actually put into action.
Yes.
Right? So.
And that's close. I mean, it's just a little bit of a stall, they're telling you. But do you feel that that's close to happening?
I think it's close to the government saying that they have an action plan.
Yeah.
I don't think we will ever really get it all. I mean, like the TRC had come out and there's still so many things within other Indigenous rights that have yet to even be put forward and into action. So
your work is still not done.
Yeah.
And you still have some things to do. I want to talk briefly about your learning journey because you and I have had many conversations. We've talked about the ever-changing world, our family. We've talked about our children and just lots of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but you are remarkable. And I love listening to you and I love reading a lot of your posts and your blogs because you've educated me as a Canadian and you've taught me things. You said something to me, it's going to last with me forever. You said to me, I had said to you actually, that sometimes people don't know any better. And you said to me, it's a mindset. It's not about people not knowing any better. It's about people not knowing any different. And that's powerful. And I just want you to explain that because I feel that leads into what your purpose is and what your message is and what your overall goal would be. So,
right. Well, I think what ends up happening is people, and myself included, please, like I am far from perfect. I wouldn't, you know what I mean? But I think we crutch a lot on like, oh, I didn't know any different. But then I think of like this generation, and we could say that maybe a child who had been brought up in a house where they're not, necessarily aware of other issues going on. But guess what? They're at these protests. They're at these rallies.
They are.
So you could say they don't know any better, but they've decided no. Like
they want to see the change.
Yeah, so they're questioning it. I think for so many, and that I could see people crutching on. Like you're gonna lean on like what you've been influenced by, right? So, but there's just a difference. Like there's there's some people who it doesn't matter. Like,
would you say that it relies a little bit on educating yourself, and if you don't know, like read and research.
Yeah, and I think
figure out
quite
the why.
Frankly, some people are just tired, and like they their hearts are just in a not in a better place, just in a different place too, right? So, or maybe also like there's generations of people like genuinely questioning what their parents or their grandparents are saying, and like it's just naturally instilled in them to do,
So it's not doing better. It's really knowing different, and I thought that was really powerful. I want to thank you for being here. I love that you joined us today as our first guest. She's our first guest for Backyard Chats. I want you to tell everybody where they can learn more, where they can read your great posts. And she has the cutest children, and I know you say you're not perfect, but you're a great mom. I see what you do for them, and I see how you really try to educate your children with everything that you learn. So can you just tell everybody where they can read more and learn more?
First, thank you, because every time I do something like this, I take a part of it on my healing journey.
I love that.
So thank you so much.
We're together on that one.
Yeah. And then you can find me on Instagram, on Facebook at Fallon Farinacci. I'm sure you'll have the spelling because it's
Yes.
not really
We'll put it
easy.
all. We'll put it all in the show.
Yeah, and then on my Instagram, you can actually always find the website for the final report for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. All the calls to justice are linked onto the website. So there's actually calls to justice on there for Canadians, just as a whole. On there, there's all the different spectrums of our government that people can do work within, but specifically just Canadians. You can go on there and you can learn how you can make changes and implement these changes.
We all need to do our part. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Confession sessions will always be about true stories of love, resilience, and self-empowerment. Stay tuned for our next Backyard Chats. So it's really good.
Yeah.
Thank you again.